What's up, y'all? Y'all are listening to Living Corporate's flagship podcast. If you didn't know, Living Corporate helps organizations build employee engagement and market trust through data analytics and data transformation, our e-learning platform, and brand marketing storytelling. We're so excited for you to be here today. The conversation you're about to hear is going to connect the dots between employee experience and go-to-market effectiveness. If you're not ready, get ready. Here we go. Dr. Laura Roberts. Let me say something for real, because there's a bunch of people for real, like that have followers and everything on socials and publish books and travel all around, and they can't make time for little old me, Dr. Roberts. You know what I'm saying? Like, you've consistently made the time to get back to me every time. I just want to say thank you just for your presence. Thank you for being willing to lend your voice to these conversations on Living Corporate's podcast. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate you, Zach. I appreciate everything that you're doing and how you continue to build up, to sustain Living Corporate Podcast, to keep it relevant. I've seen your increased investment in this platform over the years, and you're always right on time and bringing us right into the moment where we need to be, so that we can take stock, hold ourselves accountable, and keep moving forward. So it's an honor and a pleasure for me to be able to have a little dialogue with you today.
Listen, the honor truly is mine, but I'll give you your flowers off mic. Also, I want to continue with this conversation. What I appreciate about talking to academics, Black academics, is that y'all exist. So many of y'all that I've had the privilege of engaging exist in this really honest space, and I think it's funny because, there's this huge, I think there's a genuine chasm between what mainstream media will pick up and like these ideas that you may see floating around on social media that people are kind of tickling or toying with. And it's like, man, a Black academic said that like 60 years ago, right? Like this, the stuff y'all are kind of like toying with that y'all think is really interesting. Someone has written entire treaties on that. And so I'm just so excited about this conversation because I want to talk about a few different things, right? I think since the last time we spoke, last time we spoke, we were talking about Donald Trump. We were talking about the impact of Trump. And I'm not going to say that we like put him on this like special white supremacy pedestal. I think the discussion was more on how he was like a representation for a revitalized boldness and explicitness of white supremacy, in like just in everything that he kind of ripped off the veneer of gentility, right? Like it was just like, no, I'm gonna just be outwardly racist and nasty, misogynistic and homophobic and ableist and all these other isms. And it is what it is. Sue me, whatever. Today, that was some years ago, right? I come to you in this conversation a bit different, Dr. I was like, so I think like at the last time I was still in corporate America, right? Mm-hmm. Living corporate was still my side hustle. I was navigating and really trying to still build like this dual world thing where I was like, okay, I'm gonna be this executive, but I'm also gonna do this thing over here. And I believe I've come to some different conclusions since then. And I want to talk to you about I want to start by talking to you about like the concept of like power, right? Like power at work. If you were to give a definition of power, which I recognize is very broad, but power in a corporate context, like how would you define that?
Yeah. So I would say that power is the ability to attract resources, valuable, essential resources, part one. And part two, power is also having the positioning and the force to be able to mobilize those resources. Okay, so it's garnering them, attracting them. It's second, mobilizing them. And then third is orchestrating the flow
Hmm.
of those resources. So, where are the channels? Where are the conduits? Who's getting access to which precious resources? From whom are we withholding access to those precious resources? And so in an organizational context, the rubber really meets the road in any power dynamic when you say, how much influence do you have over my current status, over my well-being, over my opportunities, over just my quality of life in general. And that's really with the third, right? It's when you not only have the resources and you know how to put them in play, but now you're the one who's making those critical strategic decisions about who gets what, when, and why.
That's first of all, thank you for the answer. This is why you Dr. Roberts, you know what I'm saying? Like because I really I want to really unpack this further, because when I think about power, and you use so many different words there that I just find so interesting. You use the word force. What do you like when I hear, and as I hear like the larger part of your definition, power, it seems like you're describing someone who really, it's not like they're kind of like turning the knobs here and there. They're able to just move the machine forward, right? Like, talk to me more about, though, this idea of force. Like, like when you say that, like, why did you use that word specifically?
Well, there are lots of, first, I use resources. So that's the
Thank
first
you. You're
piece
right.
that we have to unpack, because there's where we acknowledge there are a wide range of resources that are valuable, that are cherished, that are attractive, that are even essential, right? So some of those resources are financial capital. So I'm talking about how I'm moving currency in whatever global form, but how I'm moving currency from one repository to
Mhm.
another. Right. And so in order to mobilize that, I am taking some action. Right. Now, first I have to have access to it. Then I know what to do with it. And then I can control or manage other people's access to it, not just my own, but I can orchestrate and control other people's. So force is not always a, direct one-on-one combat. It is an orchestration of a system
Mm.
where different people get access to different things based on, one, the most powerful person's preference and connections and belief systems, right? But it's also these other forms of capital that are dictating that. So, what's my social
Mhm.
capital? Right? Who am I connected to? What kind of relationships do I have? Now, we don't build strong relationships by force most of the
Right.
time. Right. So that's where the force piece is probably a little less relevant when we're talking about that type of power. If you're talking about physical strength, militaristic
Mhm.
power, then the idea of force, criminal justice system, the idea of force becomes, much more prevalent there. But when I'm talking about the power that I'm able to build, gain, and sort of garner through my relationships, that's my social capital. So I can have influence, I can have sway. It may look more gentle, right? But it still puts me in a position where I am able to have some influence over other people's existence. The third way I want us to think about these resources and the idea of force is in our psychological capital. So this is where I quote the brilliant sociologist Bob Marley, who said, "Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds." So the most precious form of power is the liberation, the emancipation of one's mindset, my thoughts, my belief in myself, my commitment to continue pursuing what is possible, in spite of what formal structures might suggest about how powerful I am or, the lack thereof. I still have some agency. I can still play a part in determining some of my critical outcomes. So I don't want power from a force standpoint to think about, what other people do to me and what I do to other people. A part of the force is also in how I continue to refuel myself.
That's a bar. So it's interesting you quoted Bob Marley because I'm curious. So of course Bob Marley was a revolutionary, and was at the time hated by the state. I'm curious, do you believe that one's perception or definition or framing of power is determined by where they are, like on the power hierarchy, right? So like I don't know if Bob Marley, as a person who was oppressed and advocating for an oppressed people, would have the same definition as an oppressor, right? Taking it back to like on the work side, I don't know if Gen Z, black or brown person, first generation professional, has the same functioning definition of power that white male executive legacy money has.
No. But I think there are losses on both sides in that. So, someone whose power is anchored in their intergenerational wealth and a sense of entitlement, just has this fundamental belief that they have a right to access. They have a right to control. Their vision of power is often one that is rooted in fewer guardrails, so free reign rather than freedom. And those are not the same things. And they correspondingly would have a belief that because they have more power historically, currently, individually, collectively, they also have a right to comfort. They have a right to not be challenged. They have a right to remain anchored and rooted in the status quo. They have a right to maintain their position of control and direction in the flow of those resources. All right. So that's one way of seeing and thinking, which does point to a mentality as well as a positionality, right? What's missing there? Obviously, concern for other. And in that, we're talking about a people who squander is actually the word that has been on my spirit this week. The word squander. When I think about what is happening on this planet, when I think about what is happening with climate, when I think about what is happening with our diversity, when I think about what's happening with democracy, and all of the ways that we have, been able to adapt and innovate and navigate and heal and cure and build and evolve and sustain. And there are still people who have so much and continue to
Mm,
squander to the
yeah.
detriment, not just of them, but to the rest of us. So, like, I know this conversation very well. I've taught in, I think, the last ratings of top 10 business schools came out, and I'm like, oh, I have a faculty ID for 4 of those. Like, I have talked to but I've been teaching for, decades. But I've been in those
Yeah.
rooms. So I'm not going to say that everybody in those rooms thinks that way or feels that way, but there is sort of a narrative about power that is very much associated with that mindset. On the flip side, as we talked about before, I think I grew up in Gary,
Yes.
Indiana in the
Yes.
1980s, right? And so having that context, that social, racialized, cultural context, socioeconomic
Mm,
context, I'm keenly aware of intersectionality, oppression, environmental racism, and other types of restricted opportunities and access for education and jobs and other healthcare, right, and other important outcomes. So being able to speak the language of power through the lens of somebody who is existing at the intersection of all those constraints is equally important, because there the bottom line is you don't have to be stuck. We don't have to remain stuck. That this outer situation does not have the right to define our inner
yeah.
world. And that's power,
Mm,
right? The fact that we still stand. I think about my ancestors. I think about the 7 women who each one lived long enough in an enslaved, oppressive society in Charlottesville,
mm,
Virginia, who lived long enough to have a daughter, 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 who was healthy enough to have a daughter, right? Who then ended up several generations back in Charlottesville at the University of Virginia as a student, and then about 20 years later ended up back there again as a professor. You see, so that's power. I think that is a lot more
yeah.
powerful than somebody saying, I don't want to have to read that book in school because it makes me feel badly.
You know,
Who's
so
powerful?
so first of all, 1000%, it's impossible to not think about the people that come before you. The people that are still in your family that are living history, right? I think about my grandparents who the first black family. They were the first black family in Rock Island, Illinois to move into their neighborhood. They got death threats every night. People were calling my grandfather's house saying they was going to kill me. I had to teach my dad and my uncles how to shoot guns to protect their house because people were threatening to come by and shoot them in the night. My grandmother had a machete by the door. Like it was a very high end white neighborhood at the time, and they integrated the neighborhood in the early 70s, and so
That is
that's
remarkable.
power, right? And they're still alive. Like I just saw them at my sister's wedding last month. They're still here. They still remember those things vividly. Um,
Wow.
and you're right. Like that power is that resilience, right? And that vision to just continue forward on and push on is power. And ironically, to your point about when people say, "Oh, I don't want to see this. I don't want to read this book," or "We're going to repeal these laws. We're going to take things away," that ironically highlights the other. That highlights the veracity or the reality of that power. Look at all y'all had to do to come together to try to stop this little girl from going to this school. Look at all this whole community had to galvanize to threaten this one black family. Think about all the power y'all had to do, all the paperwork and rigmarole you had to go through to try to stop somebody from reading some literature. Right? So that's power. I think my challenge, Dr. Roberts, is like, as I look at corporate America and I look at like just the landscape, right? And so, and I think backing up again, so Living Corporate, we started as a podcast, and now we're like a whole experience management company. We have an e-learning platform. We got data analytics, working with all types of organizations. At the core of it, though, still, because it's my business, okay? So I ain't about to stop talking about the stuff I want to talk about. I'm the CEO. We're going to talk about the stuff I want to talk about, okay? Everybody else out here talk about the bunch of bullshit. We're going to talk about the stuff I want to talk about. So we're still going to talk about the reality of employee experience on the marginalized people, because I think about so often, right, the story of black and brown people being black and brown, women, queer folks, disabled folks, first generation folks, English as a second language folks, of people on the margins, is they go into a place resilient and trying to make it work and trying to navigate, only to bump up against like institutional power that either one breaks them and they do something else, they exit, and they have a series of just kind of bouncing around to different places until whatever, or it forces them into a mold and they lose part of themselves in the spirit of just survival, right? And I'm trying to interrogate, like, to say I'm even trying to interrogate it is wrong, because I've been thinking about this for a while. Now, I ain't no PhD or nothing. That's why I want to have you on this comment. That's why we here. But my perspective, I believe at this point, is that when you look at all the various factors coming together between the economy, layoffs kind of becoming part of the just operational norm, when you look at Gen Zers having an increased presence in the workforce and a heightened demand and expectation of how they're going to be treated. Oh yeah. And then when you look at the reality of technology and how people are picking up side hustles, making their own businesses, whatever, I just don't know how this current leadership dynamic continues without a significant degradation in talent, because I don't think that the top people are going to stay. And so in my mind, I'm like, well, what, like, in my mind, I have two questions. It's like, one, is power sharing actually possible in a capitalistic context? And then two, if it is possible, what does power sharing look like? You laughing? What's going on?
Oh man, I sure hope so. I teach in business school. So, if it's not, like, I am all the way on the other side. No, I do hope that there is a middle ground. I mean, first you portrayed the tension, between these two extremes at the individual's at the level of the individual experience. Then we go to the broader, societal and macroeconomic, versions of living and thriving together. So let's start at the level of the individual. Is there an in between, from the person who is, remains and has their soul crushed or gets chewed up and kicked out, right? Like, is there any place in between there from an employee experience standpoint to thrive? I do think some contexts are healthier than others. I think there are many, many contexts that are incredibly toxic. And, on certain days and certain months and certain years, I might even go so far as to say most. I'm getting into a most season right now, because I do think that there is an loosely organized campaign to disempower Black leaders.
Let's talk about it, please.
And that is crazy making.
Let's talk about it.
That is absolutely maddening, to be the person who has been told that if you play the game, if you play by the rules, right? And playing the game doesn't mean I'm being deceptive. It's just if you decide that you're going to play Monopoly, then let's
Right.
play. Here are the rules of
Right.
Monopoly. And so, all right, now I own Boardwalk and Park Place, and you want to say, oh, you know what? Actually, the railroads are now the most expensive thing on the board. Boardwalk and Park Place are no longer that dark blue property from all of you who played old school Monopolies. We just decided we're going to change the color to
Yes, I was about
purple.
to say purple
Okay?
too.
Dark
Yes.
purple.
Yes.
Yes, right. Baltic Avenue, right? That's where we are now. And that's the bait and switch that most talented Black people who have half a level of consciousness and are able to see what's happening in front of them, much less those who are able to see around the corners. That's the reality that they're grappling with right now. You said, if I behaved in this way, presented myself in this way, collected these degrees, generated this amount of money for you, or these amount of wins in the courtroom for you, or so on and so on. You said that if I
check these boxes,
could get in the room and check the boxes and prove that I had experience, senior executive level experience, then everything would work out and I would be considered fairly, right? And surely if somebody comes across who is totally unqualified, who is of a despicable character, who has essentially tried to blow up the entire enterprise from within in front of everyone and has doubled down on the fact that they did it. They didn't face consequences, and they're telling you all they're going to do it again. And people are like, yeah, I kind of want that guy. I still don't know if she's done enough yet. Does she really have enough leadership experience? She's really kind of new to this still. So, I mean, it is the ultimate gaslighting to have been told, do X, Y, Z to succeed within this system. Keep your sanity intact along the way, which many people do. Now, some, you're right, to totally lose it. And we're seeing some of them go down now as well. And I can't use my social or intellectual or cultural capital right now to defend those folks. All right. You had a bunch of stuff, you squandered it, and you took down a whole bunch of people with you. So now we've got, our people, Black leaders, falling left and right because there were other Black leaders who were elevated into positions and given so much power
that they shouldn't have gotten, and they didn't know what
they shouldn't have gotten. What to do with it. They squandered it. They didn't know what to do with it, and so all they did was live dirty up in there. Okay, we're not here to defend them, so please don't put them in the same category. I'm speaking of the ones who genuinely, with character, with virtue, pursued this work with a desire to help build themselves up, build up their organizations, and build up their communities. And they are being systematically isolated, excluded, and disempowered right now. Their territories are being carved up and reassigned to their mediocre, prototypical counterparts. Okay. Even though they hit the numbers, the top numbers, even though they innovated and built things that didn't exist before. Now that stuff is up and running, 2, 3, 4, 5 years later, it's all getting redesignated and reassigned. And these people are looking to the left and the right. And I'm talking about our Black and brown friends. I'm especially talking about our Black women. And they're told they have a bad attitude. And so they're not sure that that they're going to be able to remain in their positions of power of leadership. So when I'm talking about this loosely organized campaign, I'm talking about the bookend of the 2020 pile-on, which was, Ooh, I got a black square. You got a black
Mhm.
square. I got a pledge. You got a pledge. I got a statement. You got a statement. And now it's, oh, we don't have to do that anymore. Oh, what? Bet? We don't have to do that. What? Lowe's pulled out and they have a black CEO. They're not doing it anymore. Ah, cool. We don't have to do it. What? Target pulled the pride. But that was Target. Ah, great. Awesome. We don't have to do that anymore. You see, so that's on the macro level. Then you get back to what, who has to bear the cost of those kinds of decisions. And it's really the people who have been on the front lines internally trying to lead this work, trying to create the win-win, trying to find a place where capitalism can coexist with the common good. But the problem is that there are people who are in power who are benefiting so heavily from these systems of exploitation that they don't buy into that vision. I 100% believe that vision is possible. I don't think that capitalism in all of its forms is fundamentally flawed. I love the idea that if you have a talent, if you have a skill, if you have a craft, you can serve it up. If it delights and pleases somebody else, they can purchase it from you. And you all have just engaged in a lovely commercial transaction of value and worth. It gets ugly when exploitation comes into the mix.
First of all, Dr. Roberts, you put the battery in my back. We about to turn up for real. We're at the 30-minute mark. Oh, we about to. Oh yeah. Oh man. So I want to respond to the last thing you said first. It's funny. So we had been jealous on some time ago to promote his book. Ben Jealous, what's up? You need to come back because it's time. You need to come. We got a lot of stuff going on. But we were talking about capitalism, and he was talking about how Martin Luther King was not anti-capitalist, that he was pro-competition. And one of my mentors, I'm not going to say his name on here because I want to make the spot too hot, but he was like, that's true. He was. However, like there's a degree of regulation that King assumed and presumed for there to actually be competition that does not exist today, right? In fact, like one could argue, like I'm not. Let's like if I was to say I'm pro-capitalist, it would be in a context, Dr. Roberts, so regulated that the average person would not call it capitalism. You know what I'm saying? Like in terms of there's not enough safeguards in place, I believe, to like facilitate the self-empowerment that capitalism kind of promotes itself to create. But that's a separate discussion for another time. The part what you was talking about at the beginning of, yes, like George Floyd was murdered in cold blood.
Yeah.
All these people start getting all these resources and making commitments. And all of a sudden, I mean, I've said this before, I'm walking down the street, white folk tie my shoe for me, offer me an ice cream cone with extra sprinkles, offers, you know what I'm saying, babysit my child. I'm like, man, my baby's only 3 months old. Okay, well, just let me know. I'm like, all right, maybe no, but okay. And so there was that moment, and you're right? A lot of Martha's Vineyard trips, a lot of Black Caucus events, a lot of awards and galas, for this very thin percent of people, and then like, okay, we're starting to see pullback, and we did see a squander. We did see people elevated and pushed into positions, only for them to squander it.
Yep.
And frankly, though, like I'll also say, I don't know if people appreciated it that in that era, in that season, how many of them weren't really empowered. They were just positioned, right? So like empowered, everything you said at the beginning of this. Hey, I can allocate resources. I can like help. I can help facilitate relationships. I can do this and this and this. They not like when you talk to these people behind the scenes, Doc, like you be talking to them too. I talk to them also. Okay.
I do.
So Now, all of them ain't as dope as they Twitter profile and LinkedIn profile would suggest. And a lot of them don't actually have real power. They're ornamental, right? They are mascots a lot of times, right? In terms of, and this is what I mean. So let's say you're the chief such and such at X, Y, and Z company. Okay. But then if I have a conversation with you and I say, hey, talk to me about your strategy. Like, I'd love to learn more about your strategy for next year and how I can support you. And you come back to me and you say, I don't really have a strategy. And I'm like, oh. I'm like, well, talk to me about your team. Like, who's working with you and mobilizing? Oh, it's just me in this department. As the chief such and such, it's just you by yourself. But I saw you posting these pictures, taking pictures with what's my man? Trevor Noah. I saw you was on stage with Mark Cuban. I saw you was at the Black Panther 2 premiere. It's just you by yourself? Okay, well, what's your budget? Well, my budget kind of works through the chief people officer, and we don't really, we kind of that more often than not, unless everybody was lying to me, Dr. Roberts, that was a large portion of my conversation. Even Living Corporate was my side hustle back in like 2021, 2022. It was a lot of like, hey, I'm positioned to like look the part, say the right thing, and be the face behind this other thing. And then you also made a point though, like, and I don't want to skate by this at all, about the moving of the goalposts. And for this podcast, we're going to say the changing of the tiles, because I like what you said about Park Place and Broadway. Let me tell you a quick story. Okay. All right. So I got two of them. So my first one, I was a consultant at a huge consulting firm. Okay. And I was trying to get promoted to like the next level. And I said, this was after I already taken mental health leave and paternity leave. So I said, hey, what can I do? I was talking to consulting is different. I was talking to my manager for the sake of this conversation. And I said, so what can I do to show that you will support me and sponsor me for promotion? How can I earn that from you? Because that's how a lot of us think. We want to earn it.
Yeah.
What can how can I work harder than I'm already outworking everybody? Let me work hard to figure out how I can earn more that you should have already given me before. But cool, how can I earn it? They said, okay, well, Zach, you're working on this little analytics thing, this little product thing. I want you to if you can take that, make it into an actual product, and then sell it out in the market. Like, go win projects and go deliver it with clients. Like, sell it. Then I will promote you. Now, remember, context is.
Are you trying to make partner? What?
I was a man.
What level of promotion are we talking?
I was just a manager. I was trying to get promoted from manager to senior manager. And the context was,
and you're building a whole new.
So if you can prove this as a revenue stream, I will sponsor you.
Yeah, a whole new revenue stream.
If you can prove this as a revenue stream, we'll promote you.
That's
okay.
Wild.
Now watch this though, because I'm Black and my life is a movie. So what do you think? So I did it. Okay. So I did it.
And you gave it to them.
Showed it to them. Was winning work. Had mad people like witnesses.
Yeah.
Hey, Zach, this is fire. Like, people was like, and then people was pulling me aside like, hey, I want to tell you, this is not normal. Like, it's not normal. Somebody said,
for somebody at your level to be doing this kind of work.
It's not normal. And they said, Zach, even for that person to give you that as a gate to pass, they did not, they thought you were going to fail. So the fact that you did it, they were like, this is crazy. Like, people said that.
Yeah. It was a
Now watch this. So I did it.
Yes.
Then I said, hey, let's sit down and talk because you said I need to check these boxes. Here's all my witnesses. Here's my charged revenue. Here's case studies because I got clients now. Let's talk about what promotion cycle looks like because I know that we're in promotion cycle. All of a sudden, all the conversations go quiet. Okay, Dr. Ain't nobody talking to me now. Okay. Then that person says, well, I just need some time to review everything. They play so long, I finally say, you know what? Let me get another manager person because they not being serious and I need somebody to give me a direct answer. Now, at this point, I knew what it was, but I wanted them to say it so I could have it in writing.
Yes.
Okay. So they came back and said, well, actually, nobody ever told you that this would qualify for us to support you for promotion. Not only that, but this isn't enough to get promoted to anything. This just shows that you have business acumen, but there are 6 other dimensions that you need to satisfy, and you haven't satisfied any of that. This is just business. This doesn't show relationship or strategy or innovation. And I'm like, and I literally said, hear what you're saying out loud to me, that this don't show none of the things you just said when I built a whole product.
Right.
What are you talking about?
This is what we're doing.
So I remember, right, at that moment, then they said, well, maybe you should just go ahead and go to this other department because they seem to like you a little bit more, this other practice, but you'd have to start over.
Oh boy.
And maybe you could do that over there with them, but we don't see a path for you here. So I had an option in that moment.
Oh boy.
Right? Yeah. I could have been like, okay, and stayed. Or I could have picked up my stuff that y'all said don't matter no way and go on. And I decided to do the latter. But that idea, right, of just we're going to give you the rules, we're going to shortcut you, we're going to shortchange you, and then we're going to act like we didn't do it when you pass this impossible test. That's the story of oppressed Black people, particularly Black women, right?
Yeah.
In corporate America.
It is. It is. It's not about delivering the results. That, many times that's not in question. Many times the results are there, plain and simple. But do they want to see somebody like you in a position of expanded authority, of more broader scope, of more significant responsibility, having direct access to more resources, and B, even more importantly, having control over other people's fate and outcomes? They don't want to see you as an influencer in any way, shape, or form that might disrupt their positioning in the hierarchy or the status quo, right? So we promote Laura is, and I'm at company XYZ. So now all of a sudden I have more sway over who gets hired. I have more sway over who gets promoted. Oh, well, we already kind of promised that to Curtis. Then Laura gets promoted, and it's like, well, wait, why did we promise that to Curtis? Because, Rashida is actually, doing more, has been here longer, has, done the things that we asked for her to do, and so on and so forth. So, why do we have a preference for Curtis here? So it's, putting a Black woman in that position who is going to read it, who's going to tell it, who's going to call it out.
She is
going to call it like it is. Right? Now, at the end of the day, what's probably going to happen? Curtis is probably going to happen. And in 5 years, Curtis is probably going to be Rashida's boss. But it won't happen without Rashida looking other people in the eye and saying, that was
Right.
foul.
Right.
And those are the kinds of things. It's the accountability
Yeah.
check, right? So it's the control, it's the sway, it's the influence, it's the seat at the table, it's the voice, but it's also the fact that when this kind of stuff goes down and people are not playing by the rules, people are not, I call it the three basics of DEI. Three basics. Be kind, number one. Number two, play fair. And number three, or else. That's how the whole thing works. Be kind, welcome
Yeah.
people. If somebody has a different lifestyle, a different way of being, a different choice that they want to make, like, look, hey, I'm a professional woman. I have invested a tremendous amount in my education, in my career. I have a deep, intimate relationship with my family, with my children. I am a divorced woman. There is no part of me that is a trad wife. Never
You're not
once.
making Starburst from scratch, or
I am not. But you know what? If that's how you want to live out
yeah.
your life, ma'am, you do you. Just don't impose that
Enjoy
on
yourself.
me, is what I'm saying. Enjoy yourself. You two didn't work that out together. Now, if you raising a red flag and like, help, I'm trapped, I need to get out, I'm going to try to coach you out of that
Yeah.
situation. But if you've decided that this is what life feels like for you, I'm going to be kind enough to let you live your life. Love is love. You do you.
So
Right. So even if I don't, from a value standpoint, even if I don't agree with it, I wouldn't do it for myself. Be kind is not always, come on, we're going to welcome you in so you can do what we do and you can live like we live and you can walk like we. Sometimes be kind is let people be, like, let them do them. And so that's one issue that we face in diverse workplaces, and especially as Black and brown people, the expectation that we're going to conform, that we're going to mutate, that we're going to
yeah.
assimilate in some way. And that's their version of be kind. That's not what that means.
There's this
Right.
like,
So play fair, we talked about play fair. You can't switch it up. You can't change the rules. You can't move the tiles around. But the third, or else, that's the accountability piece. That's when somebody is going to come and snatch you up verbally, emotionally, spiritually. If it's in your household,
physically.
maybe a little bit more, maybe depending on your household. But there's just a lot of stuff that is not going to go unchecked. We don't do as well playing along and acting like everything's okay and nothing's going down, even if it's through our silence and our expression. I'm sitting in a meeting and people are saying and doing some things and making decisions, and I'm just looking. My eyebrows are raised. I'm not saying a word. I'm just looking. But silence in those moments can also speak volumes. But what are other people around us doing, Zach, in those moments? Oh, hee hee ha ha, kiki, patting on the back. Oh, yeah, that was a great decision. Oh, sure, yeah, you want to go out for drinks? Oh, I think we're really on the same page about this one at the end of the day. I think.
No,
Right?
so like, first, man, you said so much, because the part I want to double click on is when we talk about this idea of playing by the rules and or playing fair. I think there's like this meta narrative of rules being set, oppressed people qualifying, and then those rules being changed, right?
Yes.
So like we see that from like college admissions, right?
There you go. You read my mind. I was going there. In my mind, I went
You got
right
college,
there.
you got college admissions, right? You have housing, like so much economic policy over. I'm talking not talking about the last 5 to 10 years. I'm talking about like from like the beginning, right?
Yeah, he's talking about
Like
redlining.
all these different things.
Yeah.
It's like oh well, it's almost like really like so often the experience I have is that the rules are really meant to manage classes and groups of people. They're not to actually maintain any semblance of equity, right? So even and I think that's not. I think that's more of a Western construct. That is not like an American thing exclusively. So, like an example, So like there was like some Congress, some elected official, they got quoted, but like when the ICC went after Hamas and Israel, and like one of the and like they found them both parties guilty of war crimes, and some congressman was like, "Hey, listen, the ICC is to relegate Arabs and Africans. It's not to relegate all this other stuff." And it's like that, but that mentality of, hey, these rules are meant to be boundaries for groups and cultures and peoples that we deem need rules. They're not really rules meant to hold everybody accountable. And even like the other thing you said, and I remember telling people this at like when you think about learning and development, every time, most times when we talk about Black like inclusion, when we talk about programs for any group that isn't white straight men, it involves training. And I've shared with so many people like, hey, you know, the subtext or maybe even just the overtext of that is
training. Right? But for leadership, it's learning and development. Right. but it's workforce.
It's training.
Or the workforce.
It's like this. It's like it.
Think about the three together.
It's bad.
Workforce training. It's bad. That's bad. That's a bad look. That's a bad
It sounds bad, Dr. Roberts. It's almost like, and I remember telling somebody, because I was working on this product. I was on this product team when I was at this big old consulting firm, and they said, hey, we have this DEI product. And I said, oh, what's the DEI product? They said, well, here's the problem. Here's the problem statement. The problem is that Black and brown people are promoted and hired. No, they're promoted at lower rates here. So we're going to build a product that trains them, because obviously this was their this is how the conversation started, because obviously they're not competent enough. They don't have the skill set. So this product will help rise their skill set, which will of course, by just correlation, increase their promotability. And I said, I want you to consider that your presumption of incompetence of a group of people just because they're not getting promoted at the same rate is racist. And they looked at me like I had three heads. And I said, that's racist. I said, just look at the history. I said, like, plenty of Black people in the past couldn't do, we weren't allowed to do all sorts of things. Does that mean that we were incompetent? Does that mean that we were just by demand incompetent, or are there systems and barriers in place that stymied our progression? Because if you look at, despite historical barriers for all these marginalized groups of people, Black and brown people have made incredible contributions to American society, let alone like the globe. So but there's this presumption though. There's this presumption of incompetence if every time we're having conversations about programming, there's some degree of quote unquote training, not development, not fostering, not whatever, but training. It goes back to what you said at the top of this conversation, which is and I use this term. Now, look, you're a professor. You work at prestigious institutions, so you can't say this term, but you can use it if you want to. Just credit me. A lot of times people be wanting to de-niggify niggas. That's really the goal, Dr. Roberts. We want to take off these edges. We want to civilize you. We want to tame you. We want to get you to fit within this mold, because that makes you acceptable. And I think going back is that even to me, like, those things are the types of power that reign prevalent in corporate. And like, that's where, as I think about corporate America and I think about the future of work, there are some things I believe are going to have to fundamentally shift and change if it's going to continue. Because my siblings are Gen Zers. Dr. Roberts, they not here for no training. They not. They'll go off and they'll go and stream. They'll go and build something, right? Like, they might stay with you for a while, but you're not going to get their best. You're not going to get their best effort. They're not going to fight to get promoted, right? And so, anyway, look, I I appreciate this conversation. As you think about like where we are, and you did make some Kamala Trump allusions earlier. I heard that.
Did I?
Maybe. Who's to say?
Was it that hard?
Who's to say? I don't know. Maybe I missed that.
Detect. Just a typical day in corporate America.
When you think about when you think about the future of work, and you think about the students that are coming into your classrooms, taking your courses, like, where do you believe leaders are missing? I mean, we've been kind of talking about this whole time, but like, if you were to kind of give it to me, like, what do you, like, if you were to, like, let's say you were in a room full of, like, to your point, the CEO of Lowe's, CEO of Target, the CEO of 3M, all these different leaders who have made varying levels of commitment to inclusion, varying levels of commitment to supporting the workforce of the future. Like, what would you be telling them in this moment?
Vote.
Yeah.
Period. I mean, if it's one thing that Gen Zers care about, it is their voice and being heard. And so I say to you, we stand at a critical juncture where if we all do not vote to stay in the conversation, to stay in the game, and this is going to sound hyperbolic, so just putting that out there as a heads up, we're going to lose our right to complain. In an authoritarian society, you do not have your platforms, your podcasts with promotions, your social media moments. You do not have your conversations in higher education. If that sounds preposterous, I invite you to try to go to college in Florida today and find out how many of the references that we use in our conversation today are going to be covered and where. How many of the programs and access to different developmental opportunities are going to be present, whether you call it training or you call it mentorship, or you call it a fraternity, a Black fraternity or a sorority. But anything that is affinity-based and that centers the marginalized experience in a cultural context, and by marginalized, I am not talking about a religious sect that seeks to oppress other people. I'm talking about people who are trying to live their life and to give of themselves to make a better institution and to make a better world, okay? We are not all the same. We are not all having the same conversation right now. Some people are in search of free reign. They want the power to control other people. Other people are in search of, and always have been, of freedom. We want to free them and them and them and them, okay? So it's not the same journey. So if you are a person of any age right now, and you have a mental capacity and a physical mobility to make your voice heard, you don't have any other time to play around and wait and see what happens. That's not where we are right now. If things are not perfect, you don't have to love your options. But if you still want to have the opportunity to keep building a better future, you have to keep showing up, because there's only going to be so much food home delivery and, product and present delivery that's going to pay your bills in an increasingly exploitative economy. So I suggest we all get real woke. If you thought they thought that was woke
Need to
before, I'm
better
like, you all are
open them
funny.
up. You know what I'm saying?
Right, yeah, no, because what you were getting before was a very sanitized, well packaged version of people that you felt were palatable and you were comfortable having in the room, who were modifying conversations in ways that still helped you to feel included and centered and a part of it. That's not even what it feels like to have your eyes wide open. Your eyes are wide open. You understand what the top 0.1% is currently orchestrating. And you mobilize in your own power, in your own might, your own sense of community to save your own life and to save the life of anybody today that you love and people in the future that you think you might love. So that's my word for them. We're very self-focused right now. We are, when you talked about the tokenism piece and being a leader, being selected as a token, we're playing into a lot of that with our different social media influencer profiles and cultures. It's so much about the looks, and I mean LEWK. It's so much about the looks, and that's a distraction. And hey, I like to shop. I like a nice pair of shoes. I like nice makeup. I love some jewelry. Okay. But we're putting all of our time and energy into how we get to show up individually. And in that, we're going to leave our future and our children's future, right on the altar of authoritarianism. And they don't have to take it from us by force, Zach. This is my point. To go back to our very first exchange, the power and the force piece, they're not even doing it by force. You're talking about a bunch of people who currently have free will. They have all the opportunity in the world to walk into a booth and check one or check two, or to say, man, that's crazy. What are you talking about? These are clearly lies. How could you say that about a group of people? How could you say that about FEMA? How could you, and on and on and on, right? Like, this is bananas. What are we even doing right now? But then you got a group of people who are not being forced to comply. They may be misled, but maybe deceived, maybe, but I'm sorry, the internet is still free. So if you wanted to find another point of view, a quick search perhaps, but there are multiple search engines. Even if you don't want to go the monopolistic route, there are multiple search engines out there. You have options. Find the truth, find another story. But please, for heaven's sakes, do not give over your own freedom and the freedom of everybody else to the altar of authoritarianism because you preoccupied with what is a good look. Because we're going to all be pretty raggedy in 4 years if things don't turn out the way that you and I, Zach, are deeply invested in having.
Ain't gonna be no more galas.
That's all I'm going to say. There ain't going to be no more galas. You see, all these people are on the radar, okay? They're just picking them off one by one by one.
Dr. Roberts.
I know that's sobering. I'm sorry. I try to live. I'm currently running on my social media a 50-day campaign, Grow the Good, 50 ways in 50 days. None but ourselves can free our minds. So I'm trying to put out some positive affirmations every day, but also keep us focused, keep us centered. And, that we would not be discouraged, but also that we would not be deceived about what we're experiencing here in this moment and what we need to do to meet the moment and to take hold and not squander that which we've been given.
Look, you're not apologizing for nothing around here. I think my only, if I could be so audacious to add, is that
Please.
my hope is that we recognize that even those, so we're talking about voting, even those that we vote into power, that we also have to be relentless in holding those people accountable. And even though
endless snaps for that,
right? and we have to be careful. Now, this is the part that people don't listen to. I'm not trying to nobody's feelings. We have to be careful to not allow our identity, our aesthetic, to mask what is right and wrong. So, and Coates said this recently in an interview. So behind me, I have people behind these images behind me. I have these images for a reason, right? Like for those who listen on the pod, I got Kwame Ture, I got Basquiat, I got James Baldwin. I need to get some women up here too.
Yeah, you do.
I do. I was struggling because I got to find the same thematic anyway. But you're right. The point, I got to get some women up here. On the website though, we got Fannie Lou Hamer. We have folks on this. So I'll link in the show notes. Cop some merch. Actually, and then Dr. Rappers, I'm gonna send you one. Let's just make sure after this, I got you. Look, I can't associate or invoke certain images of Blackness and then move contrary to those images. I don't believe that's right.
100%.
Right? So if I have Kwame Ture on the back, if I have Baldwin, I have Basquiat, if I have these people, we have incredible leaders like Fannie Lou Hamer on our site, I can't then be advocating for hypermaterialism, individualism, oppression, exploitation. That I'm now bastardizing these legacies and these names. And so it's important. And I think we fell into this though, right? This is not, like to your point about this influencer brand, it's dangerous when we start putting the power fist up in the air and doing this and doing that. It's like, hey, if that is what you want to do, I salute that. I respect that. But if you're not gonna be consistent, if this isn't gonna be consistent, then just put it down. Because now you're leveraging your identity, going back to this, as a prop, as a mascot, as a smokescreen to do what's wrong. So I'm looking forward to us, and I don't know how we do it, right? Because this is a shoot. It was Bell Hooks in her book All About Love. Phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She talked about, and she quoted King and Dr. Cornel West about, hey, like, this was like back in the day. They was like, hey, like, we're kind of like headed towards this place of hyper materialism and consumption.
Yeah.
That we don't really have any identity out of the things that we wear or the things that we drive or the places that we go. And it's eroding our sense of community. And frankly, it's eroding our sense of love and relationship.
Right.
So as I think about and I think all these things are connected. Like, I don't see those discussions and employee experience as two different worlds. I think they all come together. And so snaps to what you're saying. Thank you for giving my snaps. And I got to thank you for being on Living Corporate. We're over time. I've disrespected your time. I apologize. Thank you for being on the show again.
We're good.
And look, anything else you'd like to plug, we'll put it in the show notes. Anything else that you want to share, where can people find you? Where can people learn about you? What are you excited about teaching this semester? Like, I give you the last word.
Let's see. So, more immediately, it's the alignment quest. How can we be at our best more often? How can we make our best even better? And how can we bring out the best in others? Which, sounds, very syrupy sweet, I know, but it gets really hardcore really quickly because it's about raising the standard for ourselves and raising the standard for others. And so in doing that, we have to tap into the authenticity, the integrity, which you were just referencing, right? Not just the showcasing and the posturing, but know who we are and what we're willing to stand for. We don't all have to make the same trade-offs. And so in most of my teaching and in most of my writing, I try to articulate the trade-offs. What are the pros and cons of each? Probably because I'm a Libra middle child, organizational psychologist. So it's always going to come down to that. And there is an element of personal choice. And so, just respectfully, as you've just mentioned, whatever stance you're going to take, I'm got to quote last my one of my modern day favorites, who I know could be contentious for many people, but you do you. I glean where I glean. But from Queen Beyonce Knowles Carter, who says, I talk like this because I can back it up.
Okay.
And I just think that's the word. So yeah, I'm on social media platforms and, everything, but I just want to encourage us all. Yes, keep talking, but whatever you say, be ready to back it up.
It's Dr. Laura Roberts, friend of the show. Humbled, honored, thankful, grateful for you. I know we're going to have you back, but in the meantime, please take care.
Same to you. I'd love to come back anytime, Zach. Thank you. Peace.
Living Corporate is a podcast by Living Corporate LLC. Our logo was designed by David Dawkins. Our theme music was produced by Ken Brown. Additional music production by Antoine Franklin for Musical Elevation. Post-production is handled by Jeremy Jackson. Got a topic suggestion? Email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and living-corporate.com. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.